In the winter of 1776, there were no Christmas holidays for George Washington or his army. Indeed, it was a time of much debate among the general staff of the Continental Army. One thing was certain and not debated. His officers knew that if Washington didn't do something bold, the Revolution would be lost. What Washington needed more than anything was intel. Intelligence. What were the British doing in New Jersey? What was going on there? What was Cornwallis doing in Princeton? And most importantly, what was General Howe up to in New York City? General Howe was partying in New York City. He thought that he had won the war, that he had crushed the Continental Army. He thought that in the springtime he would clean up this mess called the American War for Independence. In between attending the theater and playing cards, he entertained the wife of one of his suppliers. The last thing General Howe was expecting was that General Washington would pull a miracle out of his hat. And then Washington received that much-wanted intelligence. A merchant had gotten himself across the river from Trenton and approached Washington. And he told him, "Sir, there aren't that many Hessian troops in Trenton." Hearing that news, Washington began to plan. He did, or began to plan to do, what his staff had suggested he do: take back Trenton. He ran the plan by his staff, and of course, they were in favor of it. So it was a go. Washington had to do some fast talking because many men in the Continental Army thought that they were done for the winter. They wanted to go home and take care of business. Already, Washington had lost many men to desertion. This was a pivotal moment like none other in the American War for Independence. The plan was simple in concept: a surprise attack at night. The execution of the plan? Difficult. They would have to cross the Delaware River, obviously, but they would probably be crossing it at night. And it's winter. Nonetheless, the soldiers gathered on the banks of the Delaware on Christmas afternoon. They prepared for the army to cross back into New Jersey. The big problem they faced were all these chunks of ice just floating leisurely down the river, and we're talking big chunks here. And then, if that isn't enough, a rain begins to fall at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the eastern seaboard means, well, this is winter, it's getting dark. Never mind all that. Colonel Glover and his Massachusetts boys, who are experienced sailors, they're in charge of this operation, which means the Continental Army is in good hands. No matter the weather, the men and their equipment is loaded on those boats. The boats they used were Durham boats. These large, flat-bottomed boats used to carry cargo and iron ore across the river. Cannon and horses fit easily into these boats. However, as darkness fell, the rain turned into sleet. The very dark night turned into a freezing, slippery mess. The men forged on, sticking to their plan to take Trenton at night, except they did not land on the Jersey side of the river until 4 o'clock in the morning. Once they gathered on the Jersey side, they faced a 9-mile trek to Trenton. By the time they headed south, they had a blizzard to camouflage them. They were unseen until they reached the outskirts of Trenton. Hessian guards spotted them through the snow as the Americans marched towards the city. The Hessians fired on the Americans and then turned and hightailed it into Trenton, calling out, "The Americans are coming!" The American Continental Army marched straight into Trenton, and the Hessians formed their defense. Previously to arriving in Trenton, Washington had divided his forces into three. One, the main body, and 2 and 3 were going to flank around Trenton. The main body sets up its cannons at the head of King and Queen Streets, the main drags in Trenton. They fire, and then, oh, this is the fun part, the Hessians are pinned behind buildings. They're not going out in that cannon fire. The troops who had flanked around and approached Trenton from different ways, they began firing upon the Hessians as well. The Hessians didn't have a chance. With the odds against them, the Hessians began to gather at the apple orchard. Their objective is to work their way at the bottom of Trenton, follow the course of the Assunpink Creek, gather at the bridge, and then get out of town. Well, they were prevented from crossing, and then they lost heart when their commanding officer, Colonel Rahl, was fatally wounded. It took the Continental Army approximately 2 hours to save the American Revolution. Later that afternoon in New York City, a messenger reached General Howe. Surprise, surprise, sir, but Washington and the Continental Army just took Trenton from the Hessians. General Cornwallis did not go to London. Instead, he returned to Princeton. All the players knew that there would be a second part to this Battle of Trenton. And you will learn about that battle in Part 4 of Saving the American Revolution.